Welcome to Stories by Rishik podcast. I want you to picture something for a second. Just picture your perfect solitary evening routine.
Oh, I think everyone has one of those.
Right. You know the exact one I mean. The floor in your apartment is freshly cleaned. The vegetables for dinner are perfectly chopped and prepped right there on the counter.
An absolute uninterrupted silence.
Yes, total silence. There is no one asking you where the TV remote is. No one is questioning why you cut the carrots that particular way. It is just you and your flawlessly controlled environment.
I mean, for a lot of us, that really does sound like the ultimate goal. Just zero friction.
But what if I told you that this hyper-independent lifestyle you might be craving is actually a trap? Today, we are looking at this brilliant, funny, and honestly, deeply honest essay by Rishik titled When Peace Met Tanya and Lost Beautifully.
Such a great title.
It really is. And it's a story that proves why the absolute best thing that can happen to your perfectly optimized life is for someone to come along and just completely ruin it.
Ruin it in the best way possible, though. It's a fascinating piece of writing because it starts by building this absolute monument to modern solitude. I mean, he creates this fortress of a life.
Right.
And then we get to watch in real time as he realizes he actually prefers the chaos of letting someone else inside.
Yeah.
It really challenges this massive cultural trend we have right now of, isolating ourselves in the name of self-care.
Oh, 100%. But before we get to the chaos, we have to look at the sheer perfection of his original routine. Because the way he describes it, solitude wasn't just a state of being for him. It was a luxury item.
Oh, yeah. He had this immense pride in his, what do you call it, the one pan, one plate, one spoon lifestyle?
Yes. Militant minimalism. Zero background commentary, no negotiations over what to eat for dinner. It was just militant.
Militant, but also kind of spiritual, you know? He talks about his routine with almost religious reverence. The mop wasn't just a cleaning tool. It had a specific purpose.
The pressure cooker.
Yes. The pressure cooker had an exact timing that he respected. His towel hung in its precise spot on the rack. And my favorite detail, his phone was placed face down on the table like a disciplined soldier.
The face down phone is such a modern symbol of control. It's like saying to the universe, do not perceive me right now. He even mentions that his very thoughts stood in a queue.
A queue. I love that.
To me, reading this, his life felt exactly like a perfectly coded piece of software, No bugs, totally predictable, perfectly efficient. Every single input you make leads to an exact expected output.
Right.
But software like that, if we're being completely honest, is also incredibly sterile.
Sterile is the perfect word for it. And there is a profound psychological mechanism driving why that perfectly coded software appeals to you, me, and just so many people today.
Right, because the real world is the opposite of that.
Exactly. Think about the world we live in right now. It is loud, it is unpredictable, the news cycle is constantly screaming at us, our jobs are chaotic. So what happens in our brains?
We shut down.
We do. We start to equate total environmental control with inner peace. The psychological logic is very straightforward. It's like if I can control my apartment, I can regulate my nervous system.
Wow, yeah. If there are no surprises in my kitchen, there are no surprises in my emotions.
Spot on. We truly feel that if we just know exactly where our socks are, we are winning at life.
Yeah.
Environmental control becomes this direct proxy for emotional stability.
I know where my socks are, therefore I am invincible.
Pretty much.
That is hilarious, but it is so true. We use our spaces as emotional crutches, and that was his whole thesis when he sat down to write. He wanted to write a manifesto about how true peace isn't found on a mountain retreat. It is found in the absolute predictability of your own living room.
But as you pointed out with your software analogy, what happens when a perfectly closed system encounters a massive, unpredictable new variable?
Oh, the system crashes.
It crashes hard.
It crashes so hard, and the variable in this story is announced with such a brilliant, abrupt transition. He just says, then I got a girlfriend. Her name is Tanya.
Boom. That's it.
That is it. That is the turning point where the flawless software gets a bug. Immediately, you see the physical changes in his environment. That sacred mop. The one that had a spiritual purpose.
Untouched.
It just sits leaning against the wall, completely untouched for 3 days.
And the precise timing of the pressure cooker goes entirely out the window. Why? Because instead of watching the clock, he is just standing in the kitchen, smiling at absolutely nothing.
The disciplined face-down phone suddenly forgets what face-down even means because he's waiting for messages. And those thoughts, the ones that were standing in a neat little queue, he says they're suddenly dancing.
It's a complete sensory invasion. If you live alone, you know how neutral your apartment smells. Suddenly his kitchen smells like her shampoo.
Yeah, and his carefully curated, highly specific Spotify playlist gets hijacked by songs he never even searched for.
And his dinner gets cold. Which, for a guy who prides himself on his one-pan cooking routine, is a huge deal.
A massive deal.
But his dinner gets cold because she is sitting across from him, telling a story using full-body gestures. And instead of eating, he is just sitting there mesmerized, just memorizing her expressions.
Okay, wait, I have to stop here and challenge this reaction, though, because think about your own life or anyone listening who is fiercely independent. Usually, if someone comes into your sanctuary, moves your towel, messes up your algorithm, and makes your dinner go cold, that causes massive anxiety.
Oh, absolutely.
We have all snapped at someone just for moving our phone charger. If he built his entire identity around things being exactly where he left them, why didn't this feel like a devastating storm to him?
See, that is the core psychological shift of the entire story. He didn't experience it as a threat. And he explains this beautifully by saying, she did not arrive like a storm, she came like a rearrangement.
A rearranging.
Now, when a storm hits, it destroys the house. When someone rearranges the furniture, the house is still yours. It just functions differently. He experienced a fundamental shift in how his brain defines safety and peace.
Right.
Before Tanya, peace meant the absence of noise. It meant silence, emptiness, zero friction. But suddenly, his brain rewired to recognize peace as a warm presence. It wasn't someone breaking into his fortress. It was someone turning on the lights in rooms he usually kept totally dark.
A warm presence instead of an empty room. That completely reframes how we look at relationships. Because if peace is no longer about silence, let's look at how this rearrangement played out in the most mundane details of his daily life, starting in the kitchen.
The ultimate testing ground for routines.
Exactly. He says he used to cook like a monk with a scotch.
A fantastic visual, by the way. It communicates everything you need to know about his old life. Efficient, quiet, slightly romanticized isolation.
Right, very Mad Men. But then you contrast that with Tanya. Tanya cooks like it is a massive, chaotic celebration, even if she's just making a basic plate of eggs.
Yeah.
She is tasting everything constantly. She is commenting on the texture. She is throwing in random spices at the absolute last minute.
And the crowning moment of this chaos is that she actively asks for his opinion on the food she's cooking, listens to his advice, and then confidently completely ignores it.
I love that detail so much. And his conclusion from this total kitchen anarchy is profound. He says he lost control, but he gained flavor.
Gained flavor, which feels like the thesis statement for stepping out of hyperindependence.
It really does.
And there is actual neuroscience backing up why this feels so much better to him. When you are the monk with the scotch, perfectly executing a routine, your brain gets a tiny, predictable hit of satisfaction from completing a task. But it is sterile.
Right, like checking off a box.
Exactly. But when you introduce social friction, like someone ignoring your cooking advice or making a mess, your brain is forced to engage. It releases dopamine through novelty and unexpected interaction. He lost the predictable satisfaction of efficiency, but he gained the massive emotional reward of shared experience.
And you see that exact same shift in how they deal with the aftermath of cooking, too. The tidying up. Because for his old self, cleaning the kitchen was strictly about restoring order, erasing the evidence that anyone had even been there so you can start fresh.
But with Tanya in the picture, cleaning isn't about erasing anymore. It turns into discovering traces of her.
Yes. The traces become a treasure hunt.
Exactly. A hair tie left near the sink. A coffee mug abandoned on a bookshelf where a coffee mug should never be.
A little note scribbled on the back of an electricity bill. There is this one incredibly funny moment where he talks about finding a random pen cap that she left behind.
Oh my gosh, the pen cap.
He just stands there holding this piece of plastic, seriously debating whether to throw it in the trash or preserve it on a shelf like a priceless museum artifact.
Notice Rushik's wit here. It perfectly highlights his subtle humor, but it also shows how utterly captivated he is. He is entirely disarmed. And this ties directly into a broader conversation we need to have about human connection in the modern world. We live in an era dominated by productivity gurus telling us to optimize every waking second.
Optimize, optimize, optimize.
Right. He talks about how his focus used to be treated like a serious, protected project, progress, habits, discipline. But now, His focus is leaking.
Leaking into watching her steal his French fries without asking.
Yeah.
Leaking into noticing how she says his name when she's half asleep, like she's just testing out the acoustics of the room. He even admits to using her soap in the shower and pretending it's an accident.
Which is adorable.
Yeah.
But a productivity coach would look at his life and have a panic attack over this leaking focus. They would say he's losing his edge. But a poet would look at this and nod in approval.
Totally.
Because he is illustrating a vital point about the human condition. We worship efficiency right now. We want to hack our sleep, optimize our diets, streamline our routines. But efficiency is a terrible substitute for warmth.
It really is.
You can be the most highly optimized, efficient person on the planet, standing in your perfectly clean apartment, and still be profoundly lonely.
You can literally optimize the life right out of your life.
Exactly.
But this realization creates a massive problem for him as a writer because you can see how this ruins the original point of the essay he sat down to write. How on earth do you write a manifesto glorifying the hyper-independent solo lifestyle when you are this happy being constantly disrupted?
Well, that is the meta-conflict of the whole piece.
Yeah.
He is a writer trying desperately to stay true to his original premise, but his own life is proving him wrong in real time.
Right.
He admits he actively tried to resist the change. He sat at his computer trying to write profound, stoic paragraphs about emotional self-sufficiency. He wanted to articulate the pure, unadulterated joy of eating alone and never having to share your dessert with anyone.
But he couldn't do it. He says he was right in the middle of writing this defense of solitude, and Tanya sent him a voice note. She was just laughing at something small and silly, and he writes that the bloody paragraph deleted itself.
Just poof. Gone.
He frames love as something that is extremely inconvenient if you like being right.
Which is such a sharp observation because there's an immense amount of vulnerability required to admit that. It takes serious self-awareness for a fiercely independent person to look at their life and say, I was wrong about what I needed.
Yeah.
He lists all the chaotic things she brings to his life. She asks questions that literally don't have answers. She makes plans for the two of them without checking his sacred, perfectly color-coded calendar.
The horror.
Right. She brings absolute chaos, but it is disguised as warmth. And the deeply annoying realization for a guy who loves control, he has to confess, I am happier.
It is the absolute worst when you realize someone else's messy way of doing things is actually vastly superior to your perfectly optimized routine.
Surrendering control is terrifying because it means you can be hurt or you can be disrupted. But he realizes that this specific inconvenience, the inconvenience of love, is entirely worth the risk.
So if we look at the evolution here, if the old version of his piece was all about silence, empty spaces, and total environmental control, what exactly is this new piece he found? Because he makes a very specific point, that he didn't lose his peace. It didn't vanish. It just transformed.
He defines it as a sneaky kind of happiness. And it is important to note that this isn't some loud, dramatic, cinematic romance. It is sneaky. It is the kind of happiness that quietly interrupts your strict routines and replaces them with actual, tangible reasons to enjoy your day.
You see that sneakiness in his shifting timelines, too. Think about how rigid a solo evening routine is. He used to end his evenings right on schedule.
Like clockwork.
Now the evenings just stretch out with no hard start. He used to prioritize sleeping early for maximum productivity the next morning. Now he stays awake late into the night, lying in bed, discussing absolutely useless, random topics with her with complete and total seriousness.
And he wakes up tired the next morning, but he feels like he is winning.
Because he is winning a totally different game now. This new piece he discovered is inherently messy. It is inefficient. It involves compromise. It involves having fake theatrical arguments over whose side of the bed is whose.
Oh, the classic side of the bed debate.
Right. It is sitting on the couch, watching terrible television shows and having incredibly strong analytical opinions about them.
It is sitting in a silence that feels full instead of empty. I think that is the crucial distinction for anyone listening who loves their alone time.
Yeah.
And what I really respect about his perspective is that he doesn't trash his old life. He doesn't look back and say, I was a miserable, lonely shell of a man.
No, not at all.
He actually validates the solo life.
Mm-hmm.
Coming home to a perfectly clean space is grounding. Focusing entirely on yourself is a powerful phase of life. But he realizes that his routines didn't have to die for her to fit in. They just evolved. His solitude learned how to share its space.
That is a beautiful way to phrase it.
Yeah.
He still tidies up the kitchen. He just doesn't feel with his meals. But now there is commentary from the peanut gallery while he chops onions.
Exactly.
He still focuses on his own goals and his own life, but his life just happens to seamlessly include her now. And paradoxically, by letting someone else in and surrendering that rigid control, he says his life actually feels more authentic.
The story that was meant to preach the gospel of minimalism ended up celebrating the absolute joy of multiplication.
I mean, that is the core takeaway right there.
Yeah.
He discovers that letting your life overlap with someone else's without losing your own core identity in the process is actually a much higher, more complex level of peace. Peace didn't pack its bags and leave when Tanya moved in. As he so perfectly puts it, peace just changed clothes, learned a new laugh, and started arriving late.
It stopped being quiet and started being kind. I just love that evolution. It wraps up this journey from sterile, controlled perfection to this warm, shared chaos so perfectly.
It really does. And it leaves you, the listener, with a really fascinating new angle to think about today. We spend so much of our modern lives trying to perfectly optimize our environments. We buy the smart home devices, we build the perfect morning schedules, we try to eliminate every single point of friction in our day.
We do. We're obsessed with it.
We are sold this idea that a frictionless life is a peaceful life. But it makes you wonder, if we are optimizing our lives to eliminate all friction, are we accidentally optimizing ourselves out of the very friction that makes us human?
A frictionless life gives you nothing to hold on to. Sometimes you need the friction of another person just to feel grounded.
Exactly. So tonight, try an experiment. Just leave something slightly out of place in your perfectly controlled environment. Leave a coffee mug on a bookshelf. See if the world actually ends, or if it just makes your space feel a little more lived in.
I love that.
Thank you for listening to Stories by Rushik podcast. For more such podcasts, follow Stories by Rushik on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Prime Music, and YouTube.